A few months ago, I met Jenny Just. She'd appeared at the Women's Leadership Board, which I chair at Harvard University. She floored us with her knowledge. She has a full rounded success as a human being, and her desire to share her wealth, knowledge, and resources are all about improving the ratio of success for women and minorities in financial trading. She's a gentle and a powerful woman. Let me tell you, Jenny's passion lies in finding opportunities for women to succeed at every table, as she has put it, from the classroom to the boardroom to the poker room. And that is how in 2019, she started Poker Power, her woman-led company with a mission to teach 1 million women how to play poker. Was not built for financial gain, but built because she believes the skills required to play poker are fundamental to building a solid career and success. Engaging strategic thinking, risk-taking, and decision-making. And that's just a few of the reasons. Paving the road for more women in finance, Jenny has created programs that help women finance careers in trading, fintech, and technology. Enjoy yourselves and meet Jenny Just. Jenny, according to Forbes, you're one of just 23 self-made female billionaires in the United States. Now, you've said that you cut your teeth on the male-dominated trading floor at O'Connor in Chicago. And then in 1997, you started PEAK6 with 1.5 million in seed capital. Today, your fintech empire has grown into a multi-billion-dollar financial services giant, and you house next-generation products and service brands. We certainly want you to tell us what that is, but this didn't just happen. You made it happen. Tell us also where the idea came from before we get into how you've done this.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And thank you so much for having me today. It's great to see you and be with you. I like to say that I was really good at saying yes, mostly because I didn't know I could say no. So, which allowed me to do a bunch of things early in my career, which then, of course, led to me feeling comfortable starting my own firm in my late 20s. I will back up. So I started at a company called O'Connor Associates in Chicago, right out of school. They were sort of known as O'Connor University because they were one of the best at teaching options to young people out of school. So I, in particular, did equity options. And at the time, of course, it was a while ago, we were doing that on the trading floor. So my very first day of work was Drexel Burnham and actually declared bankruptcy, and they brought me to the floor. I didn't know what was going to happen. They sat me on the stoop and they never came back for me. So there was, it's as crazy as the movies and stuff show it. It's like a sporting event every day. And so, massive room, thousands of people, almost all men, and aggressively, it's like a physical and mental exercise, for hours every day. So I get really lucky to learn there, to understand sort of the nuts and bolts, what happens. And
you guys were kind of like a white collar version of what we have back in the South, where I happen to be sitting right now, where we're selling hogs and cattle and tobacco.
There you go. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's exactly right. Hand signals and everything, and writing furiously everything down, right? Because there was no technology at the time. We would go back and insert it into a computer, but do everything by hand. And you had to be really good at, fast math, so you could stay attuned to what was going on as all the orders were coming in and out of the pits. But what I would always say about learning options, right? So I didn't know, I had a business degree, but I didn't really have a foundational sort of finance degree. And, but I jumped right to options, which is like the far right of the financial product curve. But by learning about options, they're like puzzle pieces. So you can put different combinations of them together to get different risk exposure. I can buy a call and sell a put, and it looks like I'm long stock, that type of thing. I can use debt in a call and it looks like a convertible bond. And so they were puzzle pieces. So it set the tone for, if I know this, I can kind of work my way down the curve and understand how sort of optionality in sort of in theoretical world can work in any deal or any negotiation or any sort of business situation. So I got really lucky, I think, to learn this totally by accident. I just wanted to be in the city of Chicago, and I grew up in Wisconsin, so Chicago was like the big city to me. And when I went and interviewed at the University of Michigan, anything that said Chicago after it, I went and interviewed, and O'Connor had Haagen-Dazs and beer in the fridge, and I was like, that is for me. So that's how I ended up there. It was quite fortuitous.
Haagen-Dazs and beer were the main attraction.
Were the main attraction. And also they were the only ones, it was at the time, right? So this is in 1990, that were starting to go casual. So that hadn't really hit. And it was like a couple of these other Chicago places, and, women were still wearing skirts and pantyhose and stuff to work.
Yeah, that's so crazy. That's really crazy. Your journey in the fintech industry is remarkable, though, and I'm just encouraging everybody to Google everything they can about you. When I first met up with you during your visit with our Women's Leadership Board at Harvard, I was blown away. And there's so much I want to cover with you. Before we address the challenges you've had in your career, though, can we talk about what you're most excited about in your work right now?
Sure. Well, there's a lot. I think so whenever there's like a market correction of some sort, it is. So our core trading business, which we started in 1997, is 26 years old. Never had a losing year. It is at the core of it's sort of our heartbeat. And thank you. And that's how we make our money. And that's how we use that money to do other things as well. So over the years, so we self-funded everything. And so that business, market dynamics, market shifts, like what happened in spring of what year are we in? 23, spring of 22, when the market sort of fell out of bed and the private market, dried up. How that changes the public equity option market is always interesting and always fun. When the Fed is moving interest rates around, always, allows for interesting market dynamics there. So we're always just looking for energy. We're looking for volumes. We're looking to be in the game, to provide liquidity. So the more, the merrier, as far as we're concerned. That being said, on our other businesses where we have, 25 million customers, we at end customers, but have a B2B business, Webull, SoFi, Stash, eToro, Public. Think roughly 65% of the online broker dealers are using our back-end technology in a business called PEAK6 Fintech Solutions. So when the market does what it does, it's difficult for those businesses to transition to sort of what's the new right product for their customers. So we're trying to be there and available and have new products. So for sure, highly important to us. And then think forward for them. What is the this next sort of 2 to 5 years at least look like for them and for the retail investor, right? We're hoping to democratize. That's what we offer. Just by a little bit of background, Robinhood, the first robos,
right,
Betterment, and then Robinhood got their start on our back end technology. So that was in 2000, roughly 13 or 14, and Robinhood eventually went and did that part of the back end part of that business on their own. So they're not with us anymore. But this whole democratization of, bringing, sort of filtering out Wall Street and saying, we're all welcome there. We're all welcome to see stocks and execute on them, and
bringing Wall Street to Main Street.
Exactly. That is at the core of what our tech is doing every single day. But it's a journey, right? Because it's new for so many people. And even though we have, 25 million end customers who are there through all these B2B firms, how do we get more people there and comfortable? So one of the other businesses that's really important to us is Zogo, which is a bite-sized financial literacy app that actually a young gentleman built, and we bought and it rewards you for learning. So it's an earn and learn model, was very early
Wow.
on. And how do we deliver the education when people need it most, and in a way that they want to retain it and they get rewarded for doing it. So that's super interesting, and we're doing that.
It talks plain for everybody to understand.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And then how do you have the right products at the right time? Meaning, everybody's got to trot on equities, but when interest rates are, over 4%, hitting 5%, where's my fixed income product that's readily available, right? Or, obviously 4 years ago when it was crypto, how do we keep each new product that's necessary at the fingertips of these investors so they can start to learn? And I keep saying, especially for women, how do they get to be part of the early stages of that learning, right? So
early happens so much quicker today, doesn't it? Everything moves fast today.
It does. It's funny because when crypto was hot, it's obviously been a crypto winter for a little while now, but when crypto was hot, someone had said, well, do you think, that this is going to be it? This is what we're going to use in the future? I said, well, when half the population isn't using it, no, right? Because the number of women we could see under Apex Fintech Solutions, there was a Apex crypto business. It's actually since moved out, but we could see the data, and the percentage of women relative to men is so much. It's in the teens, right? No, this is not going to be our currency. This is not going to be how we, buy a pair of pants or buy a pair of clothes. The women aren't doing it. So we have to move the women at the same rate as everybody else. And I think AI is the next new place where we have to make sure women are jumping on the bandwagon early, and not letting those who don't identify as women sort of take the lead and move the needle. We need to move it with them. So
you're so right, and we're so much a part of the numbers of everything else. So when I think about it, though, a couple of thoughts come to mind. Number one, all of that really is exciting, and there's so much to commend you for to your gift of insight and giving forward. Being a woman in the space you're in and seeing that we represent in the teens percentage of women who are active the way you are, then I think it's important for us to make clear that your journey has not been an easy one. And I love you now to talk about some of the challenges you faced as a woman in this male-dominated trading floor at O'Connor, and particularly, and how that experience has shaped your determination to succeed. I think you define success beyond yourself. So correct me if I'm on point there, but go there.
Yes. I mean, for many years, right? It's been I can't be a woman leader in this industry and not have women coming up behind me in this industry. And so, and when there's not many of me, guess what? I'm the one that has to do it. So it's not that I don't want to do it, but it's hard. It's hard to get women's attention in this industry. And, we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And I will back up. I grew up with 4 brothers. So I think for me, it was quite natural to be around men. And then I always say I'm kind of sort of a right brain person in a left brain world. Like, math and things came relatively easy. So I was able to add some different kind of value, but also have the core skills that were necessary to be in the industry. I think women plus anybody who identifies as female has extraordinary opportunity in this business. That I always say, my co-founder, he would have been really successful even if I hadn't been there. But our firm wouldn't have been as big as it was. It took somebody with a different viewpoint, because there were so many people doing the same type of thing in options trading for so many years. It took us doing something different. And that's why I know there's so much more room, because we have so few females that are still in it, in especially in trading. Of course, our large banks and such, we might be in the high 30s to low 40% women, always say, if they're not the ones that are making decisions around money, if they're not actually pressing the button and they're just around the money, they're not actually in or on the money, that's a massive difference. And that means they don't have the place of power. So we have to make decisions around the money. And that has really been my goal. So I talk about making capital allocators. People are making decisions around resources, money, et cetera. And at coming out of O'Connor, there was just a handful of women that worked there when I was there. And we very early on at PEAK6 tried to get more women into our firm, and that failed twice until 7 years ago. So it took us 3 tries before we actually got to a place where we created something, and thankfully to a very smart woman who worked at Microsoft, helped bring Bing to market. And she created, alongside of, the rest of the team, something called the Women's Trading Experience. So we said, if you are smart, you're hardworking, and you're curious, come learn. So you will come for an 8-week program in the summer, and you will learn what we do. You will start to learn options. You will start to learn our technology, and you will see what a fascinating industry, the financial world is. And then obviously it became the fintech world.
You're talking about people making decisions, Jenny. And recently I was in New York, and I addressed a question to Jamie Dimon about how active a role AI has in banking. Now, when we look at where you live and operate from and where you're teaching from, you mentioned also you were really good at math. There are 2 things I'd love you to just break apart and talk about right now. One, how good do you have to be at math in order to succeed? And 2, because you are taking risks, but 2, what role will AI play in evaluating those risks and doing that math going forward, in particular as it relates to in the teens to low 20% of women who are women participating in this field right now? Is the door opening or is it shut? I mean, we're not that strong in the building of AI right now either in terms of numbers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So I would say, so in regards to the math question, you have to be comfortable with numbers, and you have to like numbers. And then it's absolutely possible to teach options trading and the type of the majority of the money decisions that are being made in the financial world to somebody who has, we're not actively doing calculus every day, right? And by the way, the computers and are doing a lot of the work as well. So it becomes about a higher level understanding. And if you are, a smart student, you are going to be able to do this job. And later on, we'll talk about poker, but that's also true. You don't have to be a math whiz to be great at poker. So I would say I was good at math. I will also say this other statement, which is, so many women say they're not good at math, but they are. They just think that there's some higher level that there must be, right? Because I'm not doing certain things and that person is, so they must be. The likelihood you are exactly where you need to be is very high. And if not, you should ask the question. But I think we're quick to judge ourselves on our math.
We make ends meet every day, but we don't call it math.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, we're making ends meet every day.
That's right. We are everything. I say money isn't everything, but everything is money, and you are operating and able to do that. You do that in your home, in your personal life. You can do it in your department or your division or whatever you're doing. You are absolutely capable. So yes, I think it becomes more about liking it, right? Like, do I want to engage with it? And I think people don't know that they want to engage with it. And it's like the poker table. I always say there's a force field around the poker table. There's like a force field around the money table. Whether that's the boardroom table or, that meeting that you're nervous about going into, or that negotiation, right? That's all money. But there's absolutely no reason that every female can, no reason they cannot sit at that money table. In regards to AI, what I would say is I think the most important thing, and I heard a woman who's been in AI for like 10 years the other night, is that we are engaged early. And we missed, I think, in many ways on crypto, as you know, those who identify as women, just the data would say that we weren't engaged early. There was a lot of money to be made, and a lot of lessons to be learned. I always say it's not a smooth ride. Your money journey is never going to be smooth. So you learn how to take risks in new environments, but the AI environment is, you know, we laughed the other day, you know, there's a lot of party tricks out there. The core of what is happening has been being worked on for a very long time, but it's like hybrid cars or any new tech that comes out. It's not going to continue. The question is how fast it ramps, and if you're gonna ride that car or not. And my suggestion at this point, for sure, at a minimum, is to engage, you know, in understanding. And when you look at yourself in your job, ask yourself the question, because I literally was in a meeting earlier today. I said, the best employees we've ever had over the course of the 26 years are the ones who work themselves out of a job. If some piece of technology or somebody else that you can train can do that job to free you up to do other things, it's a risk.
Yeah.
The likelihood that your boss is pleased with what just transpired, that this thing is more efficient and better than it was before, is likely means that you're going to have more opportunities in the future, because you're going to keep doing the trick.
It's repeatable.
Repeatable, exactly. And that's really the beauty of AI, is like taking all these processes and you know, massive efficiency, reduce time for what, you know, the art of the human to engage more fully.
I love that so much. I sit at your feet with such awe. Let me ask you this, girl. Was there anything in your family, or growing up, that influenced you in the direction you've chosen? Because I don't even know. Are you the first generation from your family in the financial arena you've chosen to grow in?
Yep, first generation. So my mom was a school teacher and then eventually stayed home, had 5 kids, and I would say, and then my dad was the first in his family, was a surgeon. Both are fortunately still with us, and I would say the biggest influence from both of them is extraordinary work ethic. So my dad would always say every day is a work day, and my mom worked just as hard as my dad, because she basically had to do the 5 kids by herself. And you know, she doesn't sit down an entire day, and even today. And yeah, so I think at its core, now that the fact that I ended up in money really, I think was more you know, good luck than anything else. Because of course it helps in many different ways, right? So even if we have family members in different areas and not, right, it's a good source of.
But if there are members of our family listening right now who didn't grow up in families who earned their livings in a financial or trading industry, then they too, though, can see what we talked about, something being repeatable. You know, your journey can be quite inspiring for them. They don't have to have grown up in it.
Exactly. There's first of the thing I love about the markets is you learn a lot about a lot of different things. So when you're not quite sure what is most intriguing to you, you might end up leaving and being in an operating company in an area that you studied by being in the markets. But you know so much more now about that competitive landscape by having watched it from the outside, by having seen how the markets look at it, see how the analysts look at it, how the stock trades, how the competitors work, and what happens with different market environments. So there's just so much to learn. You know, it also gives you a really long, you know, sort of life cycle to do different things, because the markets aren't going anywhere. They're absolutely necessary. and then new products are coming up all the time. So
I love that you say that. I love that you say that because so many careers, we talk about women, and in particular, Hollywood is, well, I think there's a lot going on in Hollywood, or not going on in Hollywood right now. But they talk so often about, women and aging, and you can be a boss babe for years and years if you can keep this ticker going, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, yeah, I mean, my dad, who I mentioned earlier, right, even though he was a thoracic surgeon, but he retired before he wanted to, more because of how the partnership was sort of separating. But he's 72. But there's not a ton of doctors who are working past 80, right? And there's
right.
no reason that you can't be attached to the markets. And then, by the way, there's also this secondary piece, which is maybe you're not that interested in the markets as a full-time job, but what is part of your hobby, right? There's just so much to learn by being attached to the markets every single day.
Well, we are going to talk about playing poker, but I got a few more questions I got to ask.
Sure,
just to set the stage. I mean, as I said, I'm at your feet with all girls. starting PEAK6 with 1.5 million in seed capital and then transforming it into a multi-billion-dollar financial services giant. That's quite an incredible feat. What inspired you to create an alternative to traditional options firms? And what were some of the pivotal moments in PEAK6's growth?
So we didn't want to leave our company that we were at O'Connor. It eventually moved. There was joint venture with Swiss Bank, and then UBS bought Swiss Bank, and they moved out east. So I wasn't going to move. So I didn't necessarily want to, but because I had the good fortune of starting a business with my co-founder inside of the Swiss Bank O'Connor joint venture at the time. It was in the over-the-counter equity derivatives, so it's non-exchange traded equity derivatives. So when we did that quickly trounced the exchange business because it's much larger. So think Microsoft is selling puts as part of its buyback program. This is just, at the time, it was quite, revolutionary for the finance departments to start to use options. And we were part of that very early on. The banks were already doing it, but O'Connor hadn't quite done it, which is why they did the joint venture with Swiss Bank to get into that business. And then my co-founder and myself were part of doing that. And they do that because the amount they want to do it on is so large, so many shares, that they can't get that all done on the exchange floor. So it's done, contract to contract, bank to corporation. Or you might have someone like American Express Financial Advisors. At the time, that's just a customer I remember, and they might be doing a transaction for a customer or for a fund, and they do a transaction with a bank. And when we left, we thought, because the bank was moving, we said, well, we'll just do that again, which sounds like some 20-something-year-olds. I'm just going to do that again. Why we thought we could do it is quite funny, because you need a very large balance sheet to do a transaction with someone like Microsoft or Oracle or any of these other companies who are doing these trades, General Motors, Wendy's, you name it. And but we did think we were going to get find a partner. And when we started in the process, we realized, well, what are we going to do in the meantime? Because we're not making any money, so we better start trading, which we knew how to do from our previous job, obviously. So we started trading, and we started. We realized a bunch of things. One of the biggest things at the time, so we're in our late 20s, we're like, we never managed anybody before. So we don't want to hire anybody. How can we do this without hiring anybody? Because you had to populate the exchange floors, which meant Chicago, Philly, New York, and San Francisco, which now there's many more exchanges, but we don't want to do that. And we met a gentleman, we're explaining this problem, and he said, well, you can use technology. And of course, we did not know that. And so I was the one who put our first server together. And then we started connecting to the exchanges, and we were one of the first to do that off-floor equity option trading, which is different than the OTC stuff I was saying, but we were one of the first to do that. And it was out of necessity more than anything else. Because we needed to make some cash. And second, we needed to figure out how to get as far away from our weaknesses as possible. So hire as few people. You know, it's interesting actually when I say that, we did have one intern at the time when we were first starting to do this. That intern is still with us today, 26 years later. So he's one of our most senior guys in our risk department. Anyway, the vision for PEAK6, and we always say this too. So our plan A was to go replicate what we had done before. Plan B became forefront because we got a little bit lucky. So there were some market conditions. We made our first $1 million like 4 months after we started trading, which then fueled sort of this idea like, maybe we have something unique here. But as we started to do it, we started to fall back in sort of what our traditional trading habits are traditionally how somebody would trade back then, right? People who don't have a lot of technology, frankly. And we started to realize like, well, why do we have to do it the old way if we have these tools to do it a new way? And today, so we started very early on this idea of inventory management that was very atypical. And I, for a trading, usually trading firms are about the fourth decimal point. What is the true value of that instrument that I'm about to buy or sell? In this case, we're like, we took off the shelf algorithms, you know, and plugged them into our systems and said, it's not about that. And this is about something larger, and it's about this package of inventory. So so our role models were Walgreens and Walmart at the time, eventually became Amazon. And so we stepped away from what I would call the really smart mathematicians were doing in trading and made it something different. So rather than trading as a human, trading 40 names, I now, with my technology and this sort of broader expanse of a large set of inventory. So you come in, you umbrellas, I have umbrellas for you because it's raining. If you don't need them, I don't have umbrellas, right? This larger inventory management system, we went from as a human trading 40-ish names to 400 names for a person.
Amazing. So, that's just beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, I love your brain. I love your brain. And I love your brain's use of algorithms.
Yes.
You know, the story behind Apex Fintech Solutions is fascinating. Now, I think the SEC made a rare move in reaching out to you to acquire Pinson. That was a struggling company, right?
That's right.
Walk us through that journey and how you turned a loss-making venture into a profitable success.
Yeah. Well, so I think a couple key things were, one is, you know, we didn't think we were bigger than our britches, like our staying true to ourselves, not putting the cart before the horse, and you know, watching the money. And in that case, I'll just tell the story real quick. It was literally a Friday when the CEO of Pinson called Matt, my co-founder, and said he needed to borrow some money. And then on Monday, and so when you're bank, so we had a firm, we started another firm called Options House. We built and ran for 9 years, and their clearing firm, their custodian that held the money and executed everything after the trade was Pinson. Pinson did that for, so think Robinhood and Webull and Stash and all these people today, the previous generation. That's Options House was one of those previous generation. And many of those people used a firm called Pinson. And when your bank calls and asks you for money, you do not give it to them. So why would the person who's holding your money ask to borrow money from you? So on Monday, the SEC called and said, this thing is going belly up, announced fraud. We need $70 million by Friday. And we said, why are you calling us? And, you know, we're just PEAK6. And $70 million, a lot of money, especially with something with announced fraud. Like, why would we do that? And that was a come to Jesus moment for sure, because.
But why did they say they were calling you?
Well, they didn't have an answer except for that anybody else they called said no, right? So, and because who would be dumb enough to do this? And I also said, why aren't we getting a collective together, right? In all these, sort of large financial crises, you see these firms coming, the biggest firms coming together. Why aren't we as a group of firms coming together here? And 13 days later, we owned it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
So really the question at that point was, how do you make that decision? And there were a lot of moments leading up to that that allowed us to be comfortable to make that
What
decision.
made you say yes? What made you say yes?
So ultimately it was risk reward because we were a certain amount of dollars already into Options House.
Okay.
And if we had we let this thing go, that thing probably imploded completely. So
Gotcha.
the percentage chance that we could save it relative to the 100% certainty that this was going away. And then of course, in the scheme of all of what, the PEAK6 is multiple entities at that point in time, what is the risk? But I will back you up on one other really interesting thing. And there's a small nuance here. O'Connor, the firm I worked at right out of school, was a self-clearing firm. So, which means they did all that stuff that Penson did. And both Matt and I had worked in what was called the back office. We just picking up extra hours, doing extra work because that's what you should do as a young person, trying to figure out how different parts of your firm work. If we hadn't done that, that probably never would have happened. And so we had a comfort level with clearing that, the average person, if you're in trading, you want to get as far away from clearing as possible. Trading is the sexy stuff. Clearing is the not sexy stuff. Now, today, clearing, it used to be this like really long inchworm, and here's the front sexy, and here's the back end. That shrunk a bunch because of technology. So today, they're equally, the front end's always going to think they're sexier than the back, but like it can equally be sexy. And so I talk about something called compound experience, which when I look back at all the different things I did leading up to some of the larger risks, and this would have been one of those larger ones, if I hadn't said yes, and like I said earlier, it said yes to many of these small things along the way, which could have taken me right or left. They all added up, just like compound interest. There's exponential growth because your interest is earning interest. Compound. If I get those experiences earlier, the idea that they will help me along the way sooner, right? So now all these things are compounding sooner. I have an exponential growth curve in my learning. I am ready. And when Penson came, believe me, I didn't think I was ready. But in retrospect, there were many moments that were leading up to that time. Now we got lucky. Let's really be really clear. 2 years later, so we take on this firm, we get rid of 65% of the customers.
Okay.
And we basically say we're going to make this work for our firm. If we happen to have other customers, we happen to have them, but we're going to make it work. So this thing we did create, which we know does have value, doesn't fail. And so we rebuilt the technology as we would have wanted it. And then Robinhood Wealthfront Betterment came around, and nobody else had new account opening technology except for us. So Robinhood got their start with us. Those other firms got their start. That's how we have like 65% of the market today. Robinhood left after 6 years. They decided to go self-clearing several years later. But good fortune meets hard work, and so those things. I will say we didn't have a vision around going there. I think in retrospect, when we think about what that thing is actually doing every single day, settling all these trades, that sort of that operational excellence that happens inside of Apex Fintech Solutions today is actually what we built over on the trading side in 1997, and now this is 2014, basically.
It's still proof forward, though, that experience plus that, and you spoke to it earlier, that appetite for risk,
Yeah,
very much informed your ability to turn Pinson into something.
that's right. That's exactly right. And our mission wasn't the most money, right? Like if we were thinking that way, we might have made different decisions, but how it was always, we always talked about consistency. We don't have to make the most money. We just don't want to lose a lot of money. And then we want to do it really consistently over time. And so how do we put in sort of that framework in everything we do? And that's how you end up in sort of a systematic way of doing trading that really hadn't been seen at the time, a systematic way of bringing, the financial world, frankly, on the back end.
Message. That's such a big lesson. That's such a big lesson. And, actually, it kind of leads me to this. Your passion for empowering women in various industries is evident through initiatives like Poker Power, the Women's Trading Experience, and Women's Technology Experience programs. And Jenny, you said that only 14% of 25,000 money managers worldwide are female. Is this part of what motivated you to create these programs? And how did you know that you could do it when you're talking about not just making the most or earning the most money? I guess I should clarify. We don't make money. We go to jail if we make money. We earn money, right?
We earn money. That's right.
Wasn't there a commercial that used to say, we earn it?
Yes. I actually think it sounded just like that. That's funny. So during this whole process, I have 4 kids, and I was a very quiet person. And I had always said, first of all, like, how am I going to actually get women involved? And I don't want to be a public person unless I have sort of an answer. And ironically, these 2 things came about at the same time. One a little bit before the other, but in 2019, my daughter was playing a tennis match, and her dad was watching her and frustrated because she's probably the best athlete of the 4 kids and most aggressive, but not winning. And and he came home and said she may as well be hitting against a wall. She may as well be hitting with her teacher. Doesn't realize that the other girl's playing and strategizing based on what's going on, not just what they brought to the game, but what's going on in the game. And she needs to learn to play poker, and walks away. And what I find most entertaining about this, even this many years later, is that he was not a poker player, and nor was I. However, there's a lot of poker players in the trading world. And mostly I just ignored it because no reason for me to necessarily care. It was just time I didn't have, etc. Turns out that I've been playing poker my whole career, and I didn't know it. And I could have taken, I will tell you, I would taken years and losses off of my, all of my experiences if I had learned sooner. And so what ends up happening is that like 2 weeks later, after he tells me this, I did nothing in the beginning because I have nothing to do, right? I don't even know poker. I was like, should we teach our 14-year-old daughter to play poker? And then I was annoyed, of course, because I wouldn't say that about my sons. And it turns, by the way, they already know how to play. And I didn't even know that because they all figure it out. I don't know how, they just figure it out. And so then I decided to do an experiment, and I asked her friends' moms, and I say, can we get together? I just want to see what it looks like to teach these girls poker. And they were like, yeah, can we play too? So there were 10 girls and 10 moms, and lesson 1 to lesson 4, it was incredible. I say the sky's open because they literally did. The girls went from like whispering to each other, and someone lost their chips. You can have my chips. To like sitting up straight, looking at their cards, and nobody was taking those goddamn chips. I was like, what? Who are you? And how did that happen? Like, they were like 8th grade and 9th grade girls. And so I knew we were onto something. I knew getting involved with school. So poker, game of skill, proven game of skill, like chess. We don't play for money. We are talking about building skills through the game of poker that are critical for, life, for business, for money, for your professional career, etc. But how can I do it early? How can I do it early? That's really what I thought. And fortuitously or not, or however you want to think about it, we were going to SPAC Apex. Our business ended up not SPACing it. And Forbes sort of said, "Oh, here's this person." And I was like, wow, this is my time. This is my time to like bring this thing to market. And of course, then COVID comes. And so I guess I was like, I guess this is meant to be. But for me, poker was about being at the money table. You are sitting there, you are a decision maker, every hand, every round, you are practicing those decisions. You are gaining confidence at that money table. So I was like, we'll just wait till COVID's over. And of course, then it wasn't over forever. So we start doing it online. And the women and men, of course, too, but the women under PEAK6, we started asking, we said, we want to teach your daughters and your sisters and your nieces. And the women said, well, what about us? If it's so good for them, why aren't we learning? I was like, I don't know. And so now we can do it via Zoom and an app. And so we started teaching, and then Morningstar heard what we were doing, large international firm in the financial world. And we started with 30 women, 60, 90. Next thing we're March of 21, we're opening Women's International Month for them. And now today we are in 40 countries. We've taught at over 200 companies. And we finally have our own app built, the first gender neutral poker app on the market, and teaching strategy, capital allocation, taking risk every day to any woman who will listen. And the interesting thing is that for these young girls and even college girls, really hard for them to hear these messages and understand. So when we have moms and daughters,
because you're breaking cultures.
Exactly.
You know how we break things to put them back together.
And that's what we're trying to do. So what ended up happening is that these corporate women got it right away. They're like, wait, I see it. And I can do what we do live events, we do virtual events, we do lessons online. Now we have on demand on the app, but when the women got together post-COVID, all of a sudden they're like, first of all, this is fun. That's why the men are doing it, because it's really fun. Second of all, it's amazing networking, right? I get all different women, all different ages, all different seniority levels, all together, learning together, which feels really good, right? Really good and empowering. And I feel like someone's at the same place, because as much as nobody wants to play because they want to feel stupid, we're all feeling stupid because we all don't know the language. We all don't know the game, right? So now we bring them together all in the same spot. And everyone from, Google and AWS to the banks, the large law firms, it has been a crazy, delivery of message.
I want you to put it in my alma mater, North Carolina A&T. I want you to offer it to them. They have a trading floor there. I think they were the first HBCU with a trading floor, historically Black college.
Yeah.
And a business school there. But I think it would be good for all areas, not just the business school. Because it's more than demeanor. We think about poker face and stuff. It's just, you're again, I'm at your feet and all. I'm at your feet and all. I appreciate that.
Well, what we found is that literally, whether you're senior or you're junior, the next day I could think differently. I wasn't playing to win. I need to practice making decision-making under pressure.
Wow.
I need to be cognizant in a meeting. If I never talk in a meeting, I'm going to lose. Like if I never play a hand, I'm going to lose. And I'm not always going to be dealt a great hand. So now what do I do?
Oh, Jenny. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So now you're really, and perhaps you've already thought it through here, because I know you created Fintech in Action as a coalition of action-oriented corporations to accelerate progress, innovation, and opportunity in fintech and finance for Blacks. But I'm thinking about how so many skills are transferable. Teaching poker, you may have to break some ideas about what that implies to people at the community level. Teaching poker even earlier on might help kids avoid some of the decisions they make under peer culture or peer pressure. Now, now, it's my understanding that FIA seeks to tangibly increase the pipeline of Black professionals for careers in fintech and finance, and affect their long-term changes through equitable hiring, promotion, and talent retention, which happens to be my space where I live and where I earn my living. Fintech in Action is your way to accelerate progress, innovation, and opportunity for these students. And I guess originally I was thinking, well, why is there a need different for Black students than what you're teaching those moms and everybody else? I'm even going to press that question forward to you, definitely around how you originated and how it's branded, Fintech in Action, but also your thoughts on, can we hit people younger so that we can shift some of the cultural behaviors and the pressure that these kids are under, even when they're students at grade school level and elementary level. My dad taught us math by teaching us to play bid whist. Let me just put that out front for you.
Great. Did he really? That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what we have found, honestly, just opening up this dialogue on women in poker. The number of senior women and this is not, we have a bunch of research going on a bunch of different places, but we can talk about that later. Senior financial women that I run into that grew up playing poker, and it's not anything that they're talking about. I'm telling you, it's like 65-70% of the women in senior positions at these banks, at these asset managers, at the exchanges, right? That actually grew up playing poker. Like, we can change the trajectory of people. We just didn't know it. It was like right under our nose. And the men are doing it, and the women who had the opportunity through their families to do it, it can be an extraordinary tool in their toolkit in so many different ways. And the important thing, and I'll say this about poker and I'll go to FIA, which is it takes practice. Maybe exercise isn't the best analogy because exercise you do sort of solo, but like, you have to play hands. Start to see what it feels like to be in the position of power, right? As the dealer, right? And the position of power moves around the table, to have more or less chips, to play against a more or less aggressive person, all these things. And now all of a sudden you start to see them in real life when you're doing that deal with somebody, when you're negotiating your salary. And if you haven't practiced them and you're not naturally inclined, you didn't learn at home and you didn't learn it at school, like, I'm in that position. How do I take risk? I don't know everything. Oh, but I know, because if I go into a job and I negotiate my salary and I never thought about the other person, that's like looking at my cards and never thinking about what cards the other person has. Like, if I'm not thinking about what they have, how do I know how to play? And by the way, what are they thinking they think I have? What information is transferred? So there are different levels of thinking that I'm not even registering if I just think about my own cards when I go in for a negotiation. So we can give practice. We can apply. I love poker as a framework for having discussions among partners, among mentors and mentees. How would you play that hand and why? Rather than just let's go out for lunch and I don't really know what to talk to you about because you're my senior person here. Let's use an example from the app of a poker hand. How would you play that in that situation? Why? Have you ever seen that in your job? Where? It totally takes you to a different place, but then you get reps. If I don't exercise, my heart doesn't get better. My muscles don't get stronger, right? I need reps, and you need reps in poker. So just getting to know how to play it, that is our first hurdle for women, not being scared to say, I will listen. I will listen. Now,
wow, even thinking about young Black boys attempting to become young Black men, being able to do that, because you're hitting it from the gender perspective, and women at work is my thing, But we're thinking about where we have critical areas of society and at-risk people.
Yep.
You're just blowing you blow my mind, and you just warm my heart all over. Talk a little bit more, though, about FinTech in Action's goals and strategies that you're employing to increase diversity and inclusion within the industry.
Yeah. So what was interesting around the time of George Floyd, that, and there's so much going in COVID and everything happening. We're lucky as Apex Fintech Solutions to have some wonderful businesses that, who use our technology for the end customer and who are very interested. How can we leverage? How could we do this together, not just as one firm, but as many firms? So that's how that became, a multiple of itself. And initially our goal started as internships, but what we realized as we were into it almost 2 years is there's a very large lack of awareness. Mm-hmm. And we figured out many different ways, doing the research, having a lot of discussions. We have a lot of kids who come through, men and women, and those who don't identify as either. And we have a lot of young high school kids who come in, and early college. And then we have some later college years internship programs. So we were just learning a lot through doing those first 2 years of FinTech in Action. And what we really found out is it's almost really similar to what we were hearing, was similar to what we did with the women's trading experience. You have to know it's there. What is it? Like, what does it look like? How does it come to life? How do I get started in it? And it's not obvious from when I'm in school, unless you're at, your alma mater, for example, and you have that screen that's sitting in front of you, go, okay, that's what somebody does every day. So how do we initiate awareness? And so we are out there doing partnerships every month, every quarter, and then we have some larger agendas. So this is sort of our awareness campaign, so we can get to the point where we can get a better flow of interns coming in. That's what we found, right? That with all these firms that we know we can go to, because we are their service provider, they all want these kids. We just can't get enough of them. The awareness isn't there. So, and we're teaching poker to anybody who will listen, male or female, but obviously we're primarily out there for women, but particularly at that young age, showing how to use it as a critical tool for themselves, to use it in a smart way, and to use it as how to think about a decision making differently. And it's worked amazing for us to bring it to both men and women through FIA, which we didn't know necessarily was going to happen. And then what we basically do is Zogo, which I'm not sure I mentioned earlier. We have a bite-sized financial literacy app that's been out in the market, direct to consumer, for almost 4 years now. Through we actually bought it. A young gentleman who went to Duke for 3 years and built it with some of his buddies, and now works under PEAK6. But we also use that B2B. We can white label that app. It's a really quick and easy way, when we get their attention, to say, come here, learn and earn. It's a learn and earn model. Bite-sized learning, you get rewarded. And there's gift cards at the end that you can get. It's like a Starbucks or an Amazon or whatever it is. So that they're motivated to keep that cycle going, and then eventually move up the curve. And very quickly you can learn about, we put poker under risk in the Zogo app, right? Because that's really what you're helping people with. And all those ideas of, interest rates and compounding, but also of just FinTech, and what are these terms that are, and or industries that I could go into and have a really, long, prosperous career. You should be there. How can we get you there? Let us tell you about it. So that's what FinTech in Action is doing today, is on an awareness mission into those communities and at the HBCUs.
Oh wow! That's a clap and a praise. A clap and a praise, girl. Jenny, what changes or trends do you foresee in the industry at large, particularly in terms of advancements in technology and the impact on financial services?
So I think there's a couple big things we see. I'll just talk about two. One is embedded finance, which is I like using this because people don't, this as an example, because people don't expect it. I'm a dating app. I'm a dating app company. What's the first thing they do when people meet? They're going to go out somewhere. They're going to spend money. Well, how are they going to do that? And how can that dating app be a participant in that cash flow? Right? You can think of money as a product for a lot of these other businesses. I'm at Home Depot and I buy there all the time. How do I get shares back? Home Depot shares as my change, as opposed to, change. So thinking about embedded finance. And then I think the next piece is, well, I guess I would say there's two others. One is, which is all these things, all, saving, lending, investing, insurance, all these things starting to come together. So it's much easier to transact and have all your money transactions, be in one or two apps. And then the final thing is I think is interesting is as people rushed into, trading for themselves, what is the necessity on the advisory side of the business to balance? So I always say there, as people get smarter with as people grow and have money, we should always be learning. But part of the learning is doing it yourself, and part of the learning is from other people. I don't think they should be separated from each other. Because, by the way, if you're not doing some of it yourself, how do you know the questions to ask the person who's running?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important, even at a young age, when kids first start to make their first bonus or whatever it might be, to have either those mentors or those, advisors who can help them, but not do all of it. Don't leave it to somebody else. It's like it's your family's possession, right? Like how do you nurture and take care of your money? Your money has to go on a journey. It's not always going to go straight up, but you have to get smarter around money as time goes by. So I think you'll see more of that advisory. They tend to be more separate, coming together over time.
I love that. And when we think about kids, not just kids from at-risk communities or families, but also, and those are two distinctly different things that can converge. I just think that what you're doing, utilizing technology, is really liberating people from their own personal environment so that they can create their own personal cultures and behaviors that I think really can be community solving, not just individual, community solving.
That's what we hope, right? Because we're smart around the money. Maybe I said it already, but money isn't everything, but everything is money. So
we said that. Yes,
we have to. It's a language. We have to understand the language of money. We have to understand how it works. We have to, at a minimum, be conversational around money. And then the more we take steps forward, they don't have to be massive steps, right?
Right.
Massive steps. But every day we take a step, we make a decision, we make am I going to make the coffee or am I going to go buy it at Starbucks? Every time we're making those decisions, we're making trade-offs and we're understanding our money a little bit better and where we want our money to go.
I love that so much. Earlier, I was talking with an entrepreneur, Haley Thompson, who works in nutrition. She's 22 years old. She's just brilliant, in my opinion. And she was sharing the idea that, what you put on your plate is your vote. And I often say your vote is one of your strongest forms of currency. And to hear her take it to the level of what you put on your plate, I believe you're innovating us forward even more than that. And innovation is often at the forefront of successful fintech companies. How do you foster a culture of innovation within your organizations, Jenny? And what advice do you give to aspiring entrepreneurs listening to you right now in the fintech place about that? Remember now, you said not knowing how to manage people, you brought technology in. So how do we
have a balance? Yeah. So I think that there are a lot of lessons we've learned. I think taking more risks with an S, not more risk. It doesn't have to be bigger risk. It's just more regular risks, right? And so I get better at doing it, seeing it, and then I get better at cutting it off. I get better at folding. That's what I learned in poker. When do I fold? I might be all the way in on that that fourth card, and I put too many chips in already. I can't possibly fold. I have too much on the line. No, you can. You learn to fold, even if you're in too far. And so it's failing quickly, ideally, and failing small. And but more importantly, I think it ends up being about the people, right? Who are you sharing your day every day with? Who motivates you? Who's working as hard as you? So what is the work ethic of that person that you're partnering with, whether it's just on a team and they were hired and you didn't know them, or you hired them, right? How do you how do you enjoy that partnership and that journey that you're going to be on together? I'm a huge advocate of being in the office and building those relationships and working with people who want to do the same thing. I absolutely believe flexibility is incredibly important. And, I had the luxury of having flexibility because it was my company. So I would never take that away from somebody. But I also know PEAK6 would never even have existed if my previous company was work from home, because it was senior people who never would have been on a Zoom with me, who would never have known me if I hadn't been just nearby. Right. I literally, PEAK6 got started because there is one very special gentleman who Clay Struve, was a partner at O'Connor, who recognized my work, and he wouldn't have seen it because he would never have been on a screen. Right. Now, maybe he would have, who knows, but it was physically working next to each other during a time of crisis, and then him picking me for another thing, which, gave me the confidence to do the next thing and then eventually leave. So I think all of those components are incredibly important. And then of course, finally being in the money, on the money, around, don't just be around the money, right? You have to know why you're doing something. You don't just execute because someone told you to. Right? You know what the results, what is the plan, what is the intention. Money is going to come in because of this, or I'm going to save some other money because of this, but what am I doing and why?
Powerful, powerful. I mean, well, throughout your career, you've just taken such calculated risks and made bold moves that have paid off. So I think listening to you is an incredibly smart thing for all of our family listening right now. Pioneering the way for women in finance and technology. What changes or progress do you hope to see in the industry, especially in terms of gender equality and representation in leadership roles? You're doing a lot to affect change. What do you want that change to look like?
Yeah, I think the only thing between here and sort of gender equality, particularly in our industry, is here and where women want to be in terms of leadership roles or places of power is money. So I think it's money equality. The way to get to money equality, right? If we miss the AI revolution and those who identify as women aren't part of it, like it's now you're talking about another exponential thing that's growing, bottom lines of people other than those who identify as women. So we cannot avoid the conversations that feel tough, that sound like math, or don't feel like I'm an expert. I have to engage, I have to ask questions, and then I have to insert myself around the money, around what is happening in my department, my division, if I'm an entrepreneur. Like I can't let somebody else raise the money for me. I can't let somebody else create the first, balance sheet and income statement. I might not know how to do it perfectly, but I have to know it inside and out. And I can't skip a step. I can't. So that's what I hope women will start to do. They will take us seriously. And I absolutely believe that poker gives you comfort in those areas. I'll tell you one anecdote I always think is, it's cute, but it's also unnerving in many ways. Our women who are in trading here. So we were as much as 36% women allocating capital for us. It's probably down a little bit lower, low 30s right now. Hard. And if we ever lose a woman, it's big. but we're probably as high as anybody out there. And we had women come in, well, we have different meeting groups with the women, and one of the women said, you know, this gentleman next to me says he says, he talks about a stock and earnings, and he acts like he knows what's going to happen. And I was like, yes, he thinks he knows what's going to happen. And he actually vocalizes it. But we all know, and he knows, that he has no idea what's going to happen. And I have to tell you, this fascinating watching women learn poker and see people bluff and see people bet differently than they would naturally bet. It's like it never happened before. And it's like it becomes shock. Starts with shock, and then it's like, wow, is this what's happening every day anyway? Right? Like, this is just there was actually a woman who played a whole poker tournament, won it. It was a woman, played a whole poker tournament, won it, never looked at her cards. You are not playing your cards. You are playing the people at the table. And
wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Wait. Say that again. That is so big. Say it again.
I mean, I will give credit somewhere else because I didn't say it, but you in poker, you are playing the people. You're not playing your cards.
Wow. Jenny, look, I don't know if you can see me, and I'm at risk because we're on high def camera. And I ain't ready for it. You are looking at a 70-year-old woman who identifies as African American from the Deep South. There's a lot of story in that before you even get to know her as Janice.
Yeah.
You are also looking at one of your greatest fans, and I will live the rest of my life on this earth eternally grateful for what you are doing. There is so much potential even beyond what you've already achieved in how you are uplifting all of us. And I am so grateful to you for that.
I'm so grateful for you giving me
teary, and at 70, I don't cry pretty. So,
oh, you're sweet. I appreciate that so much. And you know, I always say it's a hill to climb. Nobody has ever cracked this nut with women playing poker ever in the world.
Yeah.
If we can, one woman at a time, one voice at a time, right?
Yeah.
And get our message out. Building the technology, the first gender neutral poker is like for Poker Power was like is a massive step. It took us about 18 months to do it, and finally came out in the last 12 to 14 months. But it's step one. We have a lot of work to do. We know that. So
yeah, we do. And I just love that you're doing your best and you're doing such an incredible job at it. Listen, I commit to play poker. You play 4 for 4 with me before we.
Great. Yep. Happy to do that.
All right. So we got to do. Going to ask you 4 questions. You're going to give me 4 answers. No wrong or right answers.
Yep.
First question, Jenny, you get to invite anybody to dinner you wish, any 4 people from any point in history to today. Who's at your table?
Okay. See, I love this, and this will all like come together. Okay, I'll tell you who's going to be there. Okay. Sonia Sotomayor, our one of our Supreme Court justices. Serena Williams, obvious tennis player. Jennifer Doudna, who is the biochemist known for the CRISPR, the gene editing. Taylor Swift, and sorry, I have a 5th, Christine Lagarde, which, you know, she's the head of the European Central Bank. And
yes,
there is a reason. And aside from being incredible women, they all have they either played poker or talk about, like Taylor Swift. I have no idea if she plays poker or not, but she sings about poker, which is interesting. And I think all the others actually play. So I want to sit at dinner and talk about how they got started and why.
Oh, at a master's table. Wow.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, and my goodness.
Because you're going to learn too, and then we can tell your story too.
Hey. Oh, I'm all in. Oh, wait a minute. Is that a term?
It is. Yeah, very good.
Okay. What for artists musically are you listening to, and why?
Okay, so I am all over the place in regards to music because maybe
Yay, me too.
trying to be cool for my kids or something. So I have a wide range. I guess so. I've always we actually PEAK6 has is known for having an annual anniversary party and then in person. We had our 25th coming out of COVID, which was great, and we had Bruno Mars there, and it was beyond incredible. I mean, he is a masterpiece of a musician and showmanship. So he will always be part of it. Alicia Keys, we've always wanted to have, and it's just sort of dichotomy. I'm a massive like rock fan, but I grew up on Bon Jovi, so I always go back. And I'm gonna laugh because yesterday I was in an Uber and he was. I was not going to say this one, but it was so entertaining to me. He was just blaring Bee Gees, and I get in the car. I'm like, you don't have to turn off the music, keep it going. And I laughed. I was like, I actually know some of the songs, but
yeah, I love
I had so much fun. But the other thing I was going to say is like there are these smaller. They're not that small anymore, but like Quinn 92, and like we love some of our alternative music at home. And then my final one is Vivaldi because my dad is a massive.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Look, great playlist. Great playlist.
Yep.
What 4 books do you recommend to our audience and why?
Yep. I'll be quick for you. So if anybody has been listening and wants like to walk through a woman's story who started with poker for a different reason and what she learned about herself and her life by learning to play poker, the book's incredible. I think they're going to make a movie about it. It's called The Biggest Bluff, written by Maria Konnikova, and who's a psychologist and a writer. And she knew nothing about, had an expert player teach her over 1 year, and then played in poker tournaments. That is not our goal to get women in poker tournaments, but she learned so much, and so it's a really easy read. But it hits on all these points that we talk about in poker. I love Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal. He was the United States Army general. It just talks about like traditional hierarchical structures and like how to organize leadership and collaboration in teams differently through stories. So I literally, my kids were younger when I read this, but like they were like, can we keep listening to that? And I'm like, they were just so dumbfounded by the stories. You forget you're learning a lesson. But anyway, it's really well done. When Genius Failed, when you're in our industry, I think is always the story of long-term capital management, like the brilliant people failing. And it's a good, sort of a risk, it's putting you in a mindset just to like check yourself, right? Like humility.
Jenny, how interdependent are, I really got to ask you this, how interdependent are capitalism and democracy?
Oh, wow. Wow.
That turned there, didn't I?
Yeah, no, like, so that, which is a really cool question, right? And really, really important. Yes, really important. High correlation, I think. And in fact, I talked to a group of sort of entrepreneurs in Africa this morning, right? And the whole goal there was it's called Impact Africa, and their whole goal is, one of the gentleman who leads it was a Google, etc. He had come from Africa, came over to the United States, and went back and was trying to help entrepreneurs to get sort of that what the US sort of has and why when it comes to that spirit. And so I think there's so many interdependent threads between those, and that
there's just something so appealing about poker in a democracy,
absolutely right.
I love it. I love it.
I love that everybody at the table can win.
Yeah.
Your
book, I'm sorry, you made me.
When Genius Failed, and then my last one is my son, my oldest was an English and history major, but his favorite book, which I'm just finishing, which was won the Pulitzer Prize, is Confederacy of Dunces. It's a fiction book, but it's sort of a a cult classic, and I love the character and Ignatius, and I just think I'm at fault for not reading enough good fiction. And as he tells
Yes.
me, it's an incredible important part to your brain to keep the fiction part going for that creative side. So I'm taking lessons from my son.
I so agree with you there, and I thank you for making that point. So valid, so valid, especially today when we all want to stay creative and not just be dependent on so much content that we have access to. It can get us lazy, and we just,
Exactly.
So we're going 4 for 4.
Yes.
What 4 pieces of advice do you have for our audience? And if it's advice that was shared to you by someone else, please give homage to the author.
Okay. Yes. I mean, a couple of these I said before. The one, take more risks with an S. Be on the money, not just around it. Fail fast. And I'm sure people have said that before. I just don't know who, but yeah. And I'm sure someone has said this one too, but I don't know who, but be afraid of not having ups and downs, which I really like. And, it's don't expect your journey to be perfect. Your relationship with money and taking risk it's like any other, and there's no relationship that's perfect that we have. So, and obviously play poker.
Love it, love it, love it. And listen, how did you say it? You're not playing the cards, you're playing, how did you say it?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. And my thought is to be careful about using the word love. So with the greatest care I can give it, I absolutely love that you're in this world, and I pray you become a part of my life in a bigger way. I just admire what you're doing so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And same to you. I really appreciate it. And you allowing someone like myself to share my story is, I'm super grateful.
Hey, look, girl, from my heart to your home.